Good Shabbos, everybody. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to Rabbi Ford for the invitation this morning. It's a long summer, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. I'm going to tell you a true story, and you're going to have to think for a moment what you would have done. What would you do if you had a son? He was in his early 30s, working for a great law firm, doing very well, professionally on the path to success, as many of us would define it. And that son comes to you and says, "You know I'm an Orthodox practicing Jew," which we knew, "and you know that I have been dating every Jewish Orthodox woman in Houston I can find. You know that I've traveled all over the country on these dates and these special groupings that they have in places like New York and Chicago, where they take a bunch of Orthodox young men and a bunch of Orthodox young women and they put them all together with plenty of chaperones, of course. And you know, Dad, I've been going everywhere and nothing really has clicked. I haven't met my bashert, my woman, my wife-to-be. And so, Dad, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to live with you for a year before I quit. Take all the money that I'm earning this year, and then I'm going to move to Israel. I'm going to get an apartment in Jerusalem, and I'm going to go to where the largest number of Orthodox Jewish women live in the world. And I think I'm going to increase my odds substantially of finding my bashert." Now, what would you say if your lawyer son said this to you? You would probably think to yourself one of two things. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. What's going to happen to your career? What if it doesn't work out? What if you come home empty-handed? Are they going to take you back? Are you going to have to start over? What are you going to do for money after the money you've saved runs out? Or you might say, whatever brings you happiness, whatever gives you what you need in life to be a happy person. Now, I suspect most of you would say, after you think of the first answer, you'd give the second. Because we love our kids. We want them to do well. And we want them most of all to be happy. Whatever they do, they cannot go through life feeling something is missing, especially a wife or a husband or a partner. And so he went to Israel. He was there 4 or 5 months. Things weren't looking so good. He was dating every night. There were so many Orthodox women, he said, I don't know who to pick from. They're just everywhere. Until finally, we got the word that he was seeing somebody, and he finally confirmed to us that he was in love. And most amazingly, she was in love with him. And so, they got married in Israel. I'd always ask, what will you do about where you're going to live? He says, we're going to come back to the States because all Israeli women want to live in the United States. It's better quality of life. Well, they're now in their 5th year in Israel. They have 3 children, 2.5, 1.5, and a half. And at this rate, I'm going to be a grandfather many times over. He did something which is so hard for many of us to do. You can either stay where you are, wherever you are, doing whatever you do, or you can say to yourself, this is not what I really want, and I need to make a change. And making that change, saying yes to something that's going to uproot yourself and change your whole life, is never going to be an easy thing. It's always easier just to stay where you are. How many members of our own congregation have come to me unhappy with so many parts of their life? Unhappy marriage, unhappy job, unhappy, period. And I say to them, well, do something. Well, I can't. I think about all the yeses that I have made in life. The yes to making a commitment to my wife under the chuppah. The yes to having children in a world that, when we had our children, was also a very hard environment in which to bring them into being. The yes to my Hillel rabbi's suggestion to think about becoming a rabbi when I had never thought about it before. And yes, as I've said numerous times, saying yes to accepting, even applying for the position of senior rabbi at Congregation Beth Yeshurun, when I wasn't really sure it would be the right thing for me. And I didn't think it'd be the right thing for me because all of my colleagues in New York, with the exception of one, or in Rhode Island rather, all of them said, don't go, don't apply, put it beside you, stay where you are. I was in a good position for 12 years, knew everybody. 500 families, I knew the cousins, the nephews, the babies. I'd done them all and I knew them all. Don't go to a place where the rabbi is a legend. Don't go to a place which is so big you'll never get to know everybody's names. You'll always be tripping up. You'll make mistakes. They'll never forgive you. Don't go to a place that you don't know how it's going to go. When the congregation you're at in Rhode Island just offered me a lifetime contract. But I made the decision at the encouragement of my wife and others and one of my rabbinical colleagues. She told me to get off my tuchus and reply. She said, you need to grow and you need to go. And so I said yes. Yes to applying, and yes when I was asked to accept the position a few months later. Yes, there are so many times we have a choice to make in life. Do we settle for what we are and what we have? Well, sometimes we're happy where we are and with what we have. But what if we're not? What if we're ready to stretch out and do more? My life has been inalterably changed because of the times I found the personal courage to say yes to my dreams and to my hopes and to life. Yes, not every new opportunity is the right one. Sometimes we need to second guess ourselves. And we read an interesting vignette this morning in Parashat Chukat, which would have been easy to overlook had our sages not so richly embellished it. Moses, as you know, had a brother, Aaron, and he had a sister, Miriam. And today we learn in one simple sentence that Miriam died. And even though she was an older woman, which in the biblical days, who knows what that meant? She could have been 40. But she was an older woman. And the Israelites come up to her and they ask Moses, why are you grieving so? She wasn't a young woman. You knew she was going to pass away eventually. Get over it. But he was really sitting shiva for her, crying and wailing. And when the Israelites came, because they were disgruntled, and it says they quarreled with Moses. And Moses wasn't a quarreler. And the rabbis say, why did he quarrel with them? They were always on his case for one thing or another. Why in this occasion? And he said, don't bother me. I'm paraphrasing a little bit the Torah reading. Don't bother me. My sister just died. Go away. And our sages asked, why did Moses mourn for Miriam so much? And the answer, Moses says, because if it were not for her, I would never have been born. Which is an interesting question to ask. Why didn't he say, if it were not for her, I wouldn't be alive? Because she saved him. But he's asked, he says, why, without her, I would never have been born. And here's what the sages tell. When Pharaoh issued the decree that all the male children should be killed upon birth, Amram and Yocheved, his parents, said to themselves, what's the use of bringing more children into this kind of world? Why go through 9 months of pregnancy and then have a child and have him snatched away from you just like that? And so, according to the rabbinic tale, Amram and Yocheved decided to separate from each other so there'd be no chance they would ever have children again. And since they were leaders of the people, others did the same thing. And so, they were going to beat Pharaoh at his own game. But then Miriam, a little child, comes along and says to her parents, do you know that you are worse than Pharaoh? His decree may or not be successful, but yours surely is. And so she pestered them, and she nudged them, and she pleaded with them until finally they gave in to her and decided to have children after all. And Moses was conceived and born. Can you imagine how different the course of the world would have been if the parents of Moses had been careful people, cautious people, realistic people? Well, Pharaoh said he was going to do this, I guess we better not. If they had been like that, Moses would never have been born. And if he hadn't been born, then the whole character of Western civilization would have been very different. Such a chance that Moses' parents took. The kind of chance our own parents took when they chose to bring us into the world that then as now was filled with uncertainty and danger and questions. The kind of chance our own ancestors took when they decided to leave Europe, to leave Russia, to leave Poland and come to America with little more than their dreams. The kind of chance many of our grandparents took when they moved to Houston in pre-air-conditioned days. Imagine that. In order to try their luck here in a small city far away from the much larger Jewish communities in the Northeast. So too we possess in our own way the power to play safe or to realize when a great opportunity lies before us which beckons us to say yes. This week I came across a wonderful poem written by the humorist Richard Armour. It is called To Have and to Old. The bride, white of hair, is stooped over her cane. Her footsteps uncertain need guiding. While down the church aisle, with a wan, toothless smile, the groom in a wheelchair comes riding. And who is this elderly couple, you ask? You'll find when you've closely explored it, that here is that rare, most conservative pair who waited until they could afford it. It's a point which makes the simple point that every venture, every wedding, every commitment is a gamble. You really never know who you have married until you are married. And you never know what life has in store for you until you take the risk. If you wait until you're absolutely sure about everything, about everybody, you'll never find yourself under the chuppah. If our parents had waited until they knew enough and before they had us, there would be far fewer people here today. But they didn't. Thank God they gambled and trusted the future. As the Torah itself commands, Uvacharta b'chayim, say yes to life. When each of us comes to that proverbial fork in the road, as inevitably we will, may we have the courage to say yes to those choices that sometimes may be hard, may be challenging and so difficult, but to make those choices that will give us the opportunity to live lives with wonder and challenge and passion. For who knows where the next yes you say may take you. Shabbat shalom, everybody.